you're raising or teaching a gifted student who you know can do the work, but they just won't, you're not alone, and it's probably not laziness. Some people think that gifted students are naturally motivated, but that's not always true. Underachievement and undermotivation are extremely common in the gifted population. So let's dive in. Let's first talk about extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation is when kids are motivated by things like good grades or stickers or candy or money if their parents give them money for getting good grades. Those are extrinsic rewards, and we're not going to talk about those today. Today, I'm really going to focus on intrinsic motivation and how to build that in your students or in your child. So, intrinsic motivation is when students are motivated internally and not necessarily by anything that they will get for doing well in school. So, the first thing I want to talk about is why gifted students lose motivation in the first place. If the curriculum is too easy for them, they can get bored and obviously be unmotivated to do something that's way too easy for them. Some students are afraid of failure and they struggle with perfectionism, so they don't want to even get started on something if they feel like they won't be good at it. Some students, especially twice exceptional students, might feel overwhelmed if they have executive functioning gaps. Maybe they lack planning skills or just organization skills that they need to actually get through the task. Some students have a fixed mindset, and that causes them to want to avoid anything that's challenging. Some students feel disconnected from their classroom culture. They don't feel like they belong. They don't feel like they're included because they're different. And another reason why a lot of students lose motivation is because they're given busy work instead of enrichment. So, before we talk about classroom strategies, let's zoom out a little bit and talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Maslow was a psychologist that worked to explain motivation in people. He reminds us that students can only be motivated when their foundational needs are met. Things like emotional safety, belonging, confidence. For gifted students, these areas are often overlooked. Many people assume they're fine just because they're advanced academically, but that's not always the case. There are so many social emotional issues that a lot of times go unaddressed in gifted students. And once those core needs are met, we can then look at some other things to build that intrinsic motivation in students. Let's look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. He talks about things like physiological needs, like food, sleep, sensory accommodations. A lot of times, twice exceptional students can simply shut down because the classroom environment is too loud or too bright. Another thing is like, are they sick? Maybe they're not feeling well. That could be a reason why they might not be getting their work done and why they might be feeling unmotivated. Are they getting enough sleep? Are they eating enough? These basic things, a lot of times, teachers and even parents forget about because they know that their child maybe scores high on an assessment and they don't really worry about those elements as much or don't take those into consideration. The next one is safety needs. Do they feel safe in their environment, or are they anxious or in a constant state of stress? Do they feel loved by their friends and family? Do they feel supported? Kids, just like grown-ups, have certain things that they want to feel loved. And every child might want to be loved in a different way. Maybe some child really likes to receive gifts, and another child really just wants a grown up to hang out with them and ask them how they're doing. So, really getting to know your student and getting to know what their needs are and how they feel loved and accepted is a really good place to start. The next one is esteem needs. Do they feel respected and confident and valued? And then self actualization, achieving this full potential. That's really where students can really achieve their full academic potential. So that is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And for gifted students, a lot of times, some of these areas at the bottom of that pyramid do get overlooked, and people just assume they're fine because they're advanced academically. But even gifted students sometimes can be in an abusive situation or could have experienced trauma. These things can cause them to feel unmotivated. Now, once these core needs are supported, now we can look at the self determination theory to build motivation by focusing on things like autonomy, competence, and relatedness. When you combine both of these models, our strategies can become really effective. So let's take a look at the self determination theory. This was also created by two psychologists in, I believe it was the 1980s, and there's three components to this one. The first component is autonomy. Do students have a choice? Do kids have a choice over what they do? They might not be able to choose everything, obviously, some things they're going to have to do, but maybe providing students with two different choices or options of what they could do could really help build that motivation in them. Another one is competence, this feeling that they can actually accomplish something and they are good at what they do. Scaffolding in education is really big and meets this need, and also making sure that any assignment or project that you're assigning is within this each student's zone of proximal development. So that can really help ensure that students are capable of getting this assignment done and actually have the tools they need to accomplish this. Things like passion projects or menu style assignments, choice boards, these can all help build students' competence and autonomy without creating chaos. Autonomy does not mean chaos, it just means providing students with a structured choice. All right, when it comes to competence, this is really talking about the need to feel capable. Gifted students can become unmotivated when work is too easy. They can get bored. If it's too difficult, they can get overwhelmed. And if it's too repetitive, they can get disengaged. Something you can do to foster competence is to praise their effort, not just their completion of a task. Also, to encourage them to seek challenges and to give constructive feedback. Instead of saying something like, good job on your assignment, giving really specific feedback, giving one kind of compliment on their work and then something they can work on to improve for next time. That's a really good way to give constructive feedback to students. And then also ensuring that students experience mastery at some point. We do want students to be challenged, but we also want them to balance that out with a feeling of mastery. So helping them feel like they actually accomplished something and mastered a certain skill or assignment. Some strategies to provide appropriate challenges for students include pre assessing them to understand what they already know and what they still need to work on. Compacting the curriculum a lot of times can work because that way you're not repeating skills that they already mastered. And then providing enrichment, not just extra of the same work that everyone else is doing, can be really helpful. Let's talk about what is busy work versus actual enrichment. Quick thing you can do to figure out if something you're assigning is just busy work or enrichment is, does this require deeper thinking or just more time? If it requires deeper thinking, it's likely enrichment. If it just takes more time, it's probably busy work. Busy work just fills up time. Enrichment actually grows their brain and helps them stay challenged. Now, the reason that busy work kills motivation is that when students finish a task early and then they just get more of the same task to do, their motivation is going to drop. For example, let's say the whole class is working on multiplication, one digit by one digit multiplication. Let's say they need to do 50 problems. After the gifted student has completed the 50 problems and gotten them all correct, if the only thing they have to do after that is another page of 50 problems, they're not going to have any motivation to finish that initial task because after that, they're just going to have more of the same work, which is boring and easy for them. But instead, if you offer something like a project they can work on to creatively show multiplication in some way, that would be much more motivating for them and probably a lot more motivating for a lot of students. So, something you can really ask yourself when you're planning for gifted students is, what can students do next that actually extends their thinking? Something that I like to do, just give them a blank sheet of paper and say, write a word problem or a real life situation based on the topic that we're covering. For example, if you're covering multiplication, one digit by one digit multiplication, challenge them to create a real world scenario in which they would actually have to use those skills. That can be a really easy, no prep way to help your students continue to learn and practice their skills without it being more of the same exact thing. Another strategy you can try is to normalize struggle. Help gifted students embrace challenge, teach them growth mindset, model productive failure. For example, sometimes when I'm solving a problem or modeling how to solve a problem on the whiteboard, I will on purpose make a mistake to model to them how to make a mistake and how to have a proper reaction when you do make a mistake. Do we scream and cry and pout? No, we just say, oh, I made a mistake. I'm going to try again. It's okay to make mistakes. Praising resilience and not speed. Normalize that taking risks is okay and making mistakes is okay. Mistakes are how we learn. Another strategy is to teach skills, not just content. Just because a student is gifted does not mean they have strong executive functioning. You can support executive functioning by chunking tasks, creating checklists, having visual schedules, and organizing, helping them stay organized with their tasks. A lot of times, skill gaps look like motivation gaps, but it really is just that they don't know how to do something yet. The next part of self determination theory is relatedness. This third part is the need to feel connected. This is one of the most important factors for keeping gifted students motivated. A lot of times, gifted students will work harder for teachers who see them, respect them, and understand them. Here are some ways that you can build relatedness in your classroom. So, the first way is to build a classroom community. If disrespect happens, even in the middle of a lesson, stop and repair that. That is more important than getting through that lesson for the day. Giving each student a classroom job is also a very quick way to build relatedness in the classroom. If every child has a classroom job, they are literally a key, essential member of that classroom community. Another strategy is to learn and use student names correctly. A lot of times, students that come from different countries or have different ethnicities than our own have unique names and we might not know how to pronounce them. And it is okay to ask students, how would you prefer me to pronounce your name? Or if they have a nickname. Another thing that I love to do is if a student has a unique name, I like to ask them about what their name means. A lot of times they have a very interesting backstory as to how they got their name, who gave them their name, or just what their name means in their native language. So that's always a really fun conversation to have with students. Another way to build relatedness in the classroom is to facilitate collaboration, being thoughtful about which students you're grouping together and providing students with opportunities to work on problem solving tasks together. Some ways are things like which one doesn't belong tasks are really great for building that. I'll also link those in the description box. The next one is to build relationships first. You want to communicate that you care about your students and that you're willing to try to get to know them and build a relationship with them. Little things make a big difference. Small actions matter. Greeting students by name at the door, recognizing their strengths, checking in with them emotionally, and celebrating their interests are really great ways to build relatedness in the classroom as well. When relatedness is strong, motivation grows, even if autonomy or competence aren't quite there yet. When these three needs are supported, gifted students become unstoppable. Like and subscribe for more gifted content.